It is spring ball season in Boulder, and there are position changes. There are position battles, and there is so much to talk about that. And we're going to talk about that on today's episode of Locked On Buffs.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? This is your Friday episode of Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and making me your first listen of the day. Joining me today is the lovely, the great, the legend, Scott Procter. Scott, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well, Kevin. Hey, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's been a little minute. A lot has happened. I'm excited to talk some Buffs football, man. Spring ball is in the full swing, in the full thick of things. So, man, let's chop up a little bit about it.
Let's chop it up, because spring ball for Colorado is, and we were talking about this before the show, it's a little different for most programs. I cover Stanford, I cover Utah, I've covered Texas before. All of those programs allow you to have eyes on the practice. They may have like a 20-minute period where you could take pictures or videos, and most of the time they're doing nothing, which is why they let you do it during that 20 minutes. But Colorado does not let anyone in, so everyone is kind of just going off of what we're hearing from either inside sources who are willing to share, or the coaches when they come out to the press or the players as well.
Right.
What has been your biggest takeaway from something you've heard this far this spring?
For sure, yeah, like you said, it's definitely a unique situation, covering Colorado football now with obviously Coach Prime at the helm. And, like you said, he doesn't, unlike a lot of the major college football programs in the country, media aren't really allowed at spring ball practices. That's why you have well-off media, run by Deion Sanders. You can go check that on YouTube for a bunch of great footage from spring practices and whatnot. But like you said, we get to talk to some coaches and some players after Tuesdays and Thursdays practices for the last couple of weeks. And in terms of, kind of takeaways, one of the biggest storylines I've been following that's been coming up this spring is Omarion Miller, the freshman wide receiver last year. He's a rising sophomore. He's going to be a sophomore this upcoming season. Just the buzz coming out of Buffs spring ball about that young man has really been palpable. I asked new wide receivers coach Jason Phillips a couple weeks ago, what are your impressions, early impressions? This is Phillips' first year in Colorado. Obviously, Miller was there last year, but, asked him just, Phillips, what are your kind of first impressions of Omarion? And he said, well, I like Omarion Miller, but I'm starting to fall in love with Omarion Miller. And that's kind of been what the talk of, the town has been about Omarion Miller. DJ McKinney, the cornerback transfer from Oklahoma State, just yesterday said, pretty much unprovoked, that Omarion Miller is a silent assassin. Again, we all saw what Omarion Miller did against USC last year. I don't even remember what it had, maybe 170 yards, a touchdown, close to 10 catches, just absolutely torched USC last season. And what was a fun game. He didn't do much the rest of the season for whatever reason, but this spring, he's kind of been showing on a consistent basis what he showed against the Trojans last year. And that's just going to be fun to watch, because this is a really exciting and talented receiving core. Obviously, you have Travis Hunter. You're going to have Omarion Miller, LeJonte Wester, the transfer from FAU, who's now in Boulder right now, having another good spring ball as well. Will Shepard, who isn't in Boulder just yet, the transfer from Vanderbilt, another really talented guy. And Jimmy Horn Jr. is back. He's been battling some injuries this spring, but he's getting back in the thick of things, and he was awesome last year. And I expect another big year out of him this year, even in a crowded wide receiver room. So Omarion Miller kind of has really been the talk of spring ball, at least offensively. But I also want to show some love to Michael Welch, true freshman running back, who really should still be taking high school classes right now, but enrolled early. And he is making some noise, man.
I posted the clip. He trucked Shiloh. It's hard to do. You don't truck Shiloh Sanders. It's a hard
pointed
thing to
at
do.
him. And pointed at him.
That was for you, sir. That shoulder to the mouth was for you. Hope you enjoyed it.
and that puts it into perspective perfectly. Again, like I said, this is a true freshman, somebody who should be graduating high school in about a month here, but he's already on campus, going through spring practices, making an impact. And again, CU sent him out was that earlier this week? Yeah, earlier this week, to talk to the media. Again, as a true freshman, I think that says a lot about what they're feeling about him in the building. And again, this is It's the running back room that ostensibly is led by Dylan Edwards, who obviously, was a true freshman last year, made a lot of noise in that season opening win over TCU, had 130 receiving yards as a running back. He told us this week that he's going to be playing a lot more wide receiver this week. So
I've been calling for that for a year. Ever since I've seen Dylan Edwards play, I'm like, he needs to be in the slot. They need to get him in space more.
100%. And hopefully, he kind of mentioned too, Pat Shermer, the OC, that it's kind of his plan to kind of use him more as a Swiss Army knife, get him out in motion, get him out in space, get the ball in his hands in more creative ways. And he literally said, he's like, you're not going to see me running up the center's butt much this year. And that should really just be common sense. But I really like what I've been hearing out of Dylan Edwards. And again, the emergence of Michael Welch, who, again, we saw him in person. This young man looked like a college football running back at 17, 18 years old. And it makes you think, what's he going to look like a year from now, 2 years from now, after, a year or two in the weight room with a college strength and conditioning program. So Omarion Miller making some noise. Michael Welch as a true freshman making some noise. And obviously the news with Dylan Edwards kind of telling us that he's going to be, used more in space as a wide receiver role. Kind of the biggest takeaways so far early on here is spring ball for Colorado.
I got a few different ones, but first I want to hop on the Michael Welch one. The dude is chiseled. Like he is built, and looks like he's been in college for 5 years.
Seriously.
He's been there for about a few weeks. So
literally,
the dude is a monster. I want to swing over to the defensive side of the ball. For one, everyone's talking about the other Amarion Cooper, who has kind of moved to safety, and he's been doing his own thing out there. And I think he could end up starting opposite of Shiloh, which is kind of an interesting kind of notion because obviously he was the corner opposite of Travis Hunter last season. And I think he had some good moments. He had some not so good moments, but there's a lot of movement around there in the secondary. We have Travis Hunter moving specifically to the slot for corner. They're not going to have him on the outside, which I thought was interesting. Not sure what the motivation is behind that move, but I like the kind of changing things around.
I think Travis will still play some outside corner. I think the way Coach Mathis, Colorado's cornerbacks coach, explained it just yesterday, actually, was just that they're kind of experimenting with how they can utilize Travis's elite skill set on the defensive side of the ball. And the way Coach Mathis kind of phrased it up is a lot of offenses nowadays, their best receivers usually play in the slot, So if you can move Travis inside and have him on, other teams, best receiver who is a slot receiver, that could be to your benefit. You have Travis at the slot. You have, who I mentioned, DJ McKinney, the Oklahoma State transfer at the outside corner. You can still have Cormani. You can still have Preston Hodge, the transfer from Liberty, who's going to be playing some nickel and ostensibly some outside corner as well. So I think, Travis, I don't think it's a permanent move, him being moved inside, because I think he'll be inside and outside. But I think there's just so much versatility with these guys, like how you mentioned Cooper, and Kevin Mathis, again, mentioned that Omarion Cooper has the ability to kind of take away some other teams' tight end options. And that's another interesting kind of counter that, this versatility of this secondary kind of gives Coach Mathis in this defense as well. So that's something to watch for sure.
Because the Big 12 has those tight ends. They do. I want to give you two people that I kind of want to give you a 1 through, or I want you to give me a 1 through 10 in terms of concern level. Sure. One of them, we're going to stick in the secondary since we're talking about it. Cormani McClain. He's kind of been MIA lately. He recently returned, and now they're talking about him getting back into full swings of things. Where is your level of concern with Cormani McClain? Obviously, he had some issues last year in terms of just being a college athlete, we'll just put it. Like, there was issues with going to meetings, there was issues with classes or whatever it may be. So what are your kind of level of concern with him this year?
If I had to put a number on a level of concern, I'll put it right at a 5. I'm not overly concerned at this point as we sit here on April 12th, about him, his prospects, suiting up and maybe starting, at that outside corner position, 4.5 months from now. So I'm not too concerned. Obviously, it's not ideal that he hasn't been practicing in over two or so weeks in his spring ball, but it was encouraging to hear Coach Mathis say that he is back with the team. He is, he was doing some running conditioning this week. And, Coach Mathis says as soon as he's done, back into shape, done with his running, he'll be back practicing and whatnot. So I don't think anybody really knows what's going on with Cormani other than the people inside that building. And maybe some people inside that building don't completely know what's going on with him. I don't think people should really try to speculate too much because this is a young man who you just mentioned last year was a true freshman playing college football with a lot of eyes on him. And again, he's still very, very talented. Go check out his YouTube too. He just posted a recent video of him working out. I think it was titled, don't pay attention to the noise or ignore the noise or something along those lines. So he's working. He's still focused on Colorado Buffaloes football. And I think that's really all that matters at this point.
Okay, yeah, there was a lot of transfer rumors about him.
Right.
I was even told from someone in South Florida that the murmurs were getting a little louder over there. So I was like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
My next person that I want you to talk about, and we're going back to the running backs room, and this is the guy that I thought, and I think most people thought would be kind of the head honcho in that running back room, and is Alton McCaskill.
Yeah.
And this could be something I read into everything. So I see the running backs coach, Coach Flea, talking about, well, we're hoping he'll be ready by the first game.
Right.
And it's like, oof. I was like, I thought he was ready. It feels like a repeat of last year in a sense. Obviously, they have Michael Welch and Dylan Edwards, but for the sake of Alton McCaskill, what is your level of concern in terms of how he can maybe bounce back or be the guy that they thought they were getting from 2021 was the last time he played meaningful snaps?
Honestly, even less concerned than I would be about Cormani because, as I mentioned with Micah, again, he's been very impressive, but he is still a true freshman. And yeah, obviously we saw Dylan Edwards as a true freshman last year play quite a bit, but there's going to be a learning curve, particularly with how they probably plan to use him, as an early down back between the tackles. That could be bruising on a young body, even as chiseled, and as strong as he is as a young guy. And that's where I think Alton's skill set is different than those other two guys, where Alton is kind of your 3 down back. I saw some clips recently, again, on the Reach of People, shout out Deion Sanders Jr.
He was moving.
And I'm talking about moving in space too, where I'm talking about he's running routes out of the backfield, looking very shifty for somebody who's not really a scat back, kind of smaller guy. And again, we talked about this, I think, last time. Alton McCaskill was a very, very talented player a couple years ago at the University of Houston, set the program's single season rushing record for rushing touchdowns in a season. Obviously, you mentioned it. He had some injuries last year, didn't really get into a rhythm, into things. But I think with Dylan kind of moving into more of a Swiss Army knife role, and if Micah, again, they're going to want to ease him into things, even as good as he looks. They're going to want to ease him into things. And that's where Alton, as long as he can stay healthy, I think you can have a role in this offense because they're going to need somebody to pick up some nasty yards, to pick up, a 3rd and 2, first and goal inside the 10 or so. They're going to need somebody to pick up those yards. And Alton is not only experienced, but he's also still very talented. And I think a couple more months, if he can just stay, on the healthy side of things, I think he'll be, an impactful player and somebody who this offense kind of needs to perform at a high level come this fall.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things to be excited about. I just see when I see that comment, we hope he'll be ready by week 1. I was like, what do you mean we hope? What's going on back there? Like,
no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think he's sporting a yellow jersey at this point. So, he seems to be in practice a full go. I don't know if that's just kind of, more hedging on Coach Flea's part, not wanting to completely, say that he's fully ready if he's not 100% sure. And again, he obviously had some serious injuries to deal with, over the last couple of years. So, but it was also telling that pretty much unprovoked when Coach Flea was asked about the running backs, it started with Micah and, it led on to Dylan. But I think Alto would definitely play a role.
Yeah, it's going to be a long season, obviously, and roles always change. Steven Wilkerson could get in the mix as well. Yeah. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the players that have the most to lose or gain in the upcoming spring game. But first, a word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Joining me today again, Scott Procter, the man, the myth, the legend. We're talking about the upcoming spring game. Who has the most to gain? Who has the most to lose? I'm going to start off with most to gain, Lil Wayne. No, I'm just kidding. He has nothing to gain. He is just an all-around
He's
icon.
goated.
Yeah, he's goated. There's nothing else to gain. I don't know what other level he could reach. But let's talk about position battles where it's like, I think blank could win a position battle or at least get ahead for fall camp. I'll start off, and we could kind of just ping pong it back and forth.
Sure.
I'm gonna go with the backup quarterback spot. Excuse me, and I'm gonna go with Ryan Staub. He had the opportunity to start a game, and when he had time to prepare, he played well. Obviously, the Washington State game was a disaster. That was a disaster for everyone involved. It was a disaster to watch. But Ryan Staub has obviously the Wade twin, Walter Taylor behind him, and they are both gunning for that backup spot. I think Ryan Staub kind of has the slight advantage working with Pat Shurmur and obviously the starting reps. So I think he has the most to gain in the sense of either one, he could claim that backup quarterback spot, or two, he could kind of show out and maybe transfer elsewhere and compete for a starting job elsewhere.
No, 100%. That's an interesting thought. And I don't think it's anything that or something that a lot of people are talking about right now, because obviously we know, Shedeur is QB1, but hopefully that's something that QB2 is something that the fans don't have to see at all this season. Right. But it's something that you have to prepare for. And I think I agree with you. I think Ryan Staub performed admirably in that start late in the year against Utah, especially, with some guys out and, some less than ideal protection up front. He kind of made the best of that situation, I think. And I think that bodes well for him going into this spring and heading into this fall. But I have to say that Walter Taylor, the Vanderbilt transfer, really intrigues me. I mean, obviously he's 6'7", 220 plus pounds. The dude is a bulldozer playing quarterback, a lefty. That also intrigues me from an ostensibly. But I just think, they brought him in for a reason. And you can say the same thing for the Wade twin, who also plays quarterback. But I think Walter Taylor, again, his intangibles and his physical tools, I think just kind of give him the opportunity, if need be, to be a legit, kind of QB2 for this team if it comes to that. But in terms of me, somebody who has a lot to gain, it's somebody I mentioned earlier, going to the other side of the ball. That's DJ McKinney, with Cormani McClain's status kind of up in the air, and the coaching staff kind of seeing Travis Hunter move more into the slot, seeing what they have out of Preston Hodge and see what they can do with Omarion Cooper, maybe playing more safety. I think DJ McKinney, with a strong spring like he's had in this strong spring game, we could end up looking at him come fall as the starting cornerback opposite Travis Hunter, and I think that is something that I think a lot of Buffs fans and that coaching staff in particular would like to see, because again, this is a highly touted guy. He played all 14 games for Oklahoma State last year. This is as a redshirt freshman, so he still has 3 years of eligibility to play. And if that clock can kind of get started this year, I think that coaching staff would love that. And again, Coach Mathis said it this week that they knew that they were getting a good player in DJ McKinney, but they didn't know that they were getting a leader. And that kind of came across during his press conference this week. And that's something that he talked about, is he kind of sees himself, even as, like I said, a freshman, sophomore, is one of the older guys in that secondary room. And he's taken ownership and leadership of that group. And that's something you want to see as a newcomer. And I think, playing alongside Travis Hunter, learning under Deion Sanders and Kevin Mathis, who both played in the NFL, I think DJ McKinney, again, has the physical tools, can obviously play ball. But again, with this strong spring ball, I think we can look at him as a locked-in starter, which is something I didn't necessarily project a couple months ago, assuming, again, Travis and Cormani were the guys at outside corner.
Yeah, I think, and it kind of adds on to yours a little bit. Cormani may be someone with a lot to lose just by not being able to kind of be there. Right. When you're not available, it's kind of like the worst thing. It's the worst thing in sports. Lack of availability is like your biggest enemy. I'm going to go over to the offensive line, and I'm going to go with Tyler Brown. And I feel like you could go either direction with him, but I feel like he has more to gain than he has to lose, simply because they brought in Jordan Seaton, all the transfers, right? Jordan Seaton's, from what I've heard and read, is he's locked down the left tackle spot. Like, it is his spot. He's not relinquishing it.
He looks he looks as advertised.
Yeah. And then you have, like, there's maybe an opening at center. There's maybe an opening at right guard or right tackle. But I think Tyler Brown is kind of like consistently the odd man out when people are discussing the offense line. I feel like it's usually Savion Washington is in the mix for that right tackle spot. It's kind of like the only other name that you hear that's not one of the transfers. And so I think if you're Tyler Brown, the spring game is like a chance for you to really show, hey, I know you brought in all these new faces, but I'm here and I could play. I could be a starter too.
100%. No, I agree with that. I think the offensive line is that's something that hasn't really materialized itself into a clearer picture, through a couple weeks of spring ball. I think there's still about, 10 guys who you can see, kind of really competing, for those 5 offensive line spots. And that's honestly a good problem to have. We know how awful that offensive line was last year, both, protecting Shadur and in the run game. So I think, aside from Justin Mayers and you mentioned it, Jordan Seaton, I don't know if there's any other locked in starters on that offensive line. So spring game is going to be crucial for that position group in particular. I'll stay on the offense side of the ball and guess in terms of maybe somebody who might have something to lose, and it might not even be his own doing, but Shimon Mateer, the tight end from Cincinnati, who was really highly touted, and he is a good player, and I'm still expecting him to carve out a role in this offense. But with the news that Dylan Edwards is going to be playing more receiver, with this receiver room looking as stacked as it is, and Coach Phillips has already talked about a lot of 10 personnel, 11 personnel, where there's 4, maybe 5 receivers on the field at a time. I'm wondering if, Mateer might somehow get phased out or not have as big of a role as maybe he thought, or maybe a lot of us thought in this offense, because there are a lot of mouths to feed. And I think everybody knows that, particularly in the receiver room. And when there's a lot of mouths to feed, somebody might be left a little hungry. You know what I'm saying? Might be left without their right portion of food. And I don't know right now if that ends up being him. But, again, with some of the moves that this offense is making in terms of moving guys around positionally, I think, that tight end position is something that, could end up not being a staple, not being a part of Colorado's base offense moving forward. They might end up deciding that this team is really just best when there are 4 or 5 receivers on the field and we can spread it out wide and use our speed. But again, I'm hoping Mateer, because again, dude can play football, can go up and get the ball. I'm wondering if, he ends up just being kind of a third down red zone type of package type of player. So that'll be interesting. If he has a big spring game, though, that might quell any, questions that we might have about him and his role in this offense.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I don't think a lot of people are focused on this tight end. This tight end room is weird. Let's just put it that way. So like Shimon Mateer, like you said, highly touted. It was like, okay, they have a tight end. Last year they had Mikey Harrison, who was like a converted walk-on wide receiver who just happened to be tall. He was not a tight end. He just happened to be tall. And they were like, Mikey, you're tall, hop over to tight end. And then they go out and they bring in Mateer, and then they go get Sam Hart from Ohio State. They move Savell Smalls from the former edge rusher to tight end. And it's like, okay, this room's a little weird. Do they plan on using it, or are they just going to be an extra offensive lineman, essentially? Right. It's really interesting. I like that you brought that up. I'm going to go over to the defensive side of the ball. And I know he's a leader on the team, but that doesn't mean that you're a starter on the team. And I'm going to go with Shane Cokes. I think a lot of the guys that they brought in, whether it be Torian Carter, Anquin Barnes, Quincy Wiggins, all these guys from SEC programs that are big. Obviously, 2 of them haven't played a lot. But I think if you're Shane Cokes and maybe even Amari McNeil, we'll just go the 2 defensive tackles from last year. Their jobs are on the line. Like they brought in all these guys for a reason. They want these guys to play. They want them to be in the mix there. And I think he really needs to showcase he could play physically in the middle if that's where they use him. Obviously, he's kind of like a tweener, so they don't really have like a spot for him. But I do think that he's kind of, both him and Amari McNeil have a lot to lose with their starting spots. Give me your last person or your last job.
No, I mean, I first off, I agree with you, man. I think, quite honestly, frankly, I'd be pretty surprised if either of those dudes, Cokes or McNeil, played a decent amount this year. With all the additions that they made on that side of the ball and that position group in particular, it was obviously concerted effort because they didn't like how teams were pretty much able to run at will at them last year. And in addition to that, there was pretty much virtually no pass rush either. And that's just going to make you one of the worst defenses in the Big 12 if that continues into 2024. So that's going to be something to watch. Again, I really like Anquin Barnes. I really like Torian Carter. I really like BJ Green as well. You know, they have some really Quincy Wiggins. They brought in some dudes who can really play, who really, to me, look like starters. And I don't know if at this point, if Cokes and McNeil are those guys with those other guys in the room. But yeah, man, in terms of you wanted one more? You wanted one more?
Yeah.
Okay. I got to think about this one. I haven't really prepared. One more.
I could suggest one for you because I think
What's up?
I have another one. Trevor Woods at linebacker, most to gain, because obviously Coach Prime has talked about the linebacker room needing more guys. And so Trevor Woods is kind of in that awkward spot where he's not going to be a starting safety. He could be a starting linebacker, but he might not be in there on obvious run situations because obviously he's a little on the smaller side. So maybe he could prove that he could kind of be an every down linebacker, or he could just be a guy that they can't take off the field.
For sure. I mean, it's going to be interesting because I think I saw he's playing both. He's playing both safety and linebacker still. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of where his true home ends up being and what that looks like. I think Woods is a player, and even a couple other guys on the beat. It seems like he's not as accepted as maybe some of the other guys on the team. Yeah, he's not. That's a good way to put it. For whatever reason, it doesn't really make sense to me. I think Trevor Woods is a really good player and somebody who it's not easy to be a safety and move down into the box and play inside linebacker. Not only did Woods do it, but he looked pretty decent doing it too. He wasn't perfect. He obviously is going to have growing pains and showed some growing pains as well. But I think it was pretty impressive for him not only to make that transition, but also I think he had a career high in tackles, you know, his first game kind of moving into the box at inside linebacker. So I think he can play and he's going to find a role, whether that be in the secondary or on the second level on this defense this year. So I think Woods, I think that linebacker room as a whole, we might get into it later with the transfer portal, but I think that linebacker room as a whole, if I had to guess, is probably the weakest link of this entire team at this point. You know, I think Levante Bentley is probably, you know, penciled in as a starter right now, but I think that the Buffs coaching staff still thinks that they can get better at that group, at that position, you know, this spring, whether it be in the portal or elsewhere.
But you want to get better everywhere. And so obviously we're going to talk about where they want to get better the most because they don't have many spots left. I don't know the exact number, but it's not like they're going to be bringing in 20 more guys. So we'll say we'll call it a 10 to 12 spot minimum or maximum, if you will. And they have a lot of guys or talents or spots or whatever that they need to address. But first, a word from our sponsors. If you are going to a sporting event, a concert, whatever it may be, you need to do it with Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You could do everything on this app. You could see where your seat is. You could see what your view would be. There should be no polls in front of you by surprise because Game Time lets you see it. They have their lowest price guarantee. They will credit you 110% of the difference. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, to conclude this episode of Locked On Buffs, which I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day and make me your first listen. Scott's joining me again. We're talking about the portal. What does Colorado need? You have, let's just say you had a budget, Scott. I gave you a $20 budget. How much money are you spending on the transfers? Like, what position are you like, okay, this is getting 15, this is getting like $10. What position would you be targeting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm allocating most of those funds to the linebackers, man. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, again, Levante Bentley and Trevor Woods at this point are the front runners to be the starting linebackers, according to Coach Dancy a couple weeks ago. And that's I don't think that's ideal. I don't think that's ideal for anybody involved. Again, Woods, who I like, I think he can play both. He can be a tweener. He can play safety. He can play in the box as well. But I don't know if the Buffs defense is going to be at its best with those two kind of playing, you know, at that second level for 3 downs, you know, every game, you know. So with that being said, I think linebacker is definitely the position that needs to be targeted. And I think it will be. I think both Coach Prime and Coach Dancy are pretty much into that, the fact that they have guys really pretty much circled and targeted right now who they might be pursuing when that time comes. And that's something they're going to have to do. They're going to have to find somebody who can obviously be a stalwart in the run game, but also be versatile and flexible enough to drop back and get in the passing lanes. It really makes the loss of DJ Lundy, the Florida State transfer back in December, just painful, because he would have been perfect. He would have been the perfect kind of piece at the second level for this Colorado Buffaloes defense. So I expect a starting caliber linebacker to arrive via the portal here soon. And there's another position too. I would say offensive tackle. I would say obviously Jordan Seaton looks like a starter, but I think this offensive staff would love to add another starting caliber offensive tackle. Again, Khalil Benson, the transfer from Indiana. I've seen him a lot. I projected him as the starting right tackle. I've seen him at starting right tackle this spring in practices and whatnot. But I still think that there's room to improve there. And again, injuries happen. It's just a part of the game, especially with big guys who are banging every weekend in practice on Saturdays. And again, also too with Seaton, we love him as a starter, but he's a freshman. I think you'd be naive to think that he's not going to go through some growing struggles at some point this season. And it would be nice to have another veteran kind of experienced starter to plug either a left or right tackle. So probably go $15 for the linebackers, about the remaining $5 for offensive tackle. Okay. But otherwise, I really like where this running back room is, where this receiving room is, quarterback room is. I love the secondary, the versatility of it, and the defensive line and pass rush. We talked about it. I think is honestly loaded at this point. So those are really the two spots that I expect them to address, and I think they will.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to spend my $20 pretty similarly, but I'm going to break it up in weird numbers. We're going to go 16 to linebacker, $16.
Fair enough.
I think, like, honestly, if you wanted to go all in on one position, like all $20, like slap it on the linebackers, I would be like, I'm not mad at that. Like, if you want to get two quality starting linebackers, go ahead. But I'm going to go 16 there. I'm going to go $2 to a running back just because I think they need another body in that room. They have a lot of undersized guys, and I think it's interesting. They obviously, none of them got injured, knock on wood. I don't want anyone to get injured, but Alton McCaskill's been injured. We don't know what state he's going to return in. Dylan Edwards, is he really a running back anymore? We don't know yet. We haven't seen how he's been used. He might transition to a wide receiver full-time before he even realizes it. I think he still said that he wants to play running back and still sees himself as a running back.
Right.
But I think oftentimes coaches that move guys to receiver like that, they often lean to them being a receiver more than a running back. And then Michael Welch, a freshman. You never want to have all your eggs in the basket of a freshman. Right. And Steve Wilkerson, for whatever reason, I don't want to say they don't trust him, but he's kind of the forgotten guy. Like, they use him a couple times in goal line situations, and then all of a sudden we never see him again. So maybe throwing a running back there. And then you brought this up earlier. I'm going to spend my last dollar on a tight end. So I think realistically, because I went 16, 3 for the running backs, and then $1 for tight ends. Don't want to overspend here. We're on a low budget.
budget.
Tight ends. Like, I think if Shimon Mateer is not the guy, or just isn't what they were hoping he was, they need someone else that could come in and either block or be a pass catcher. The Ohio State transfer has not played, and he could be a good player. We don't know. Savell Smalls, he has not played tight end at the college level. We don't know what he is. Obviously, there's something not clicking for him to kind of be a 5-star guy that just couldn't make it work at his position.
Right.
So maybe if a tight end from like a FCS school is looking for an opportunity and he's got some proven experience, or maybe is a guy who got a few looks last season at a Power 5 school, throw a buck at him, see what happens. Maybe he could kind of help them get these heavy sets where they could operate and run differently. But that would be how I'd spend my money. Scott, what is the one thing you're most excited for that spring game? Because there's a lot of things to be excited about. There's a fashion show, a Lil Wayne concert, obviously the last airing of a Pac-12 Network's event.
Yeah. I mean, I got to say, man, I am pretty excited to see Lil Wayne perform, man. He got to be, I was telling somebody, man, he's definitely probably my top 3 favorite artists of all time. Maybe not currently, but all the time. stuff I'm listening at. I mean, and then Boss Man D-Lo is also going to be there performing reportedly, and that's going to be a movie. I'm excited for that for sure. But in terms of on the field, in terms of actual football stuff, stuff that I'm looking forward to, man, I'm really excited to see Shadur, man. I'm excited to see Shadur really sling that rock to some really impressive weapons. I'm excited to see LeJontay Wester in person for the first time. Again, I mentioned him, the FAU transfer. I don't think I can say his name enough. And honestly, it feels like at this point, he's kind of being forgotten about, but that young man is so electric. He's going to be returning punts as well. He is so electric with the football in his hand. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the connection between Shadur and his receivers, obviously Travis or Marion as well. And just defensively, how Robert Livingston kind of gets this defense to play and kind of what their identity is going to be. You know, obviously they're going to be very versatile. They're probably going to have a lot of moving parts, but I want to see in particular also too how the front seven of this Buffs defense kind of looks and operates with probably a lot of new faces. We're going to see Bentley. We're going to see Wood at the second level, but I want to see, Quincy Wiggins. I want to see Anquin Barnes and Torian Carter and, see what they look like up front and see how quickly they can get to the quarterback and affect things in the run game as well. So a lot to be looking at, but, Shadur in particular, his pass catchers and just defensively up front, how different they look. I think it's going to be the biggest things that I'm going to have an eye out for.
Yeah, I'm looking for obviously the concert. The concert's gonna be dope. Lil Wayne was like my introduction to rap music. I feel like as like a young
I feel like a lot of our generation feel the same way.
Yeah, he was like my introduction to hip hop and rap. So obviously that's really cool. I'm looking for the secondary. I want to see how they kind of obviously going against Shedeur Sanders is not easy. So I'm not expecting them to like shut him down, but I want to see how they can either one contain the receivers and two kind of make Shedeur make some difficult throws, and like you said, the pass rush and just the run defense in general, because those things were bad. And then the offensive line, is it settled? Is it not? I guess we'll find out, or we'll get some sort of semblance. Scott, I appreciate you for joining us. Tell the people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Absolutely, man. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter, formerly I guess X, formerly known as Twitter, at Scott Procter _ Go follow my work at the Colorado and Coloradoan.com, man. I'm writing about the Buffs every damn day, just about. So, man, follow in, stay tuned. Kevin, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's always dope chopping it up with you, my guy.
Thanks for hopping on. We'll have to do a spring ball collab when that time comes. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, all that jazz. We have 5,000 subs. We're going up, and we're going up to 6. We're gonna get some cool interviews. We're gonna get some cool guests. It's gonna be just a blast this upcoming month. So don't miss it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.